All right, now it's time to call the insurance company to verify the insurance benefits. And so you're going to use that 1-800 number that the person who called you, they gave you previously to do this. So you call that number. Typically, you'll get a voice recording when you call, and they'll ask you different types of things. For instance, if they'll ask you if you're a member, if you're a provider. If you're a member, press 1. If you're a provider, press 2. So you'll press 2. Then they'll ask you different questions. Do you want to verify insurance benefits? Do you want to ask about a claim? You'll say that you want to verify benefits. So press, whatever, number 1 for that. Do you want to verify medical benefits or dental benefits? Medical is usually the one that's associated with behavioral health. So you'll choose that one. And so on and so forth. Sometimes you have to go through an automated system and answer a bunch of questions before you can talk to a human. I usually like to talk to a human to make sure that I don't need prior authorization to do testing, but for you guys, you may not have to do that. You may be able to do your verification differently just by using Availity or something like that. But I usually like to call the insurance companies. So when I do reach a person eventually, they'll usually ask me for some information: my name, my phone number, my tax identification number, my NPI number. Those are the typical things that they'll ask for. Then they'll ask for the name of the client and the client's date of birth, and so I'll give that to them. They'll ask for the insurance identification number. Remember, you got that when the person called you, and the group number. Sometimes they'll ask for that as well. So that's the typical information that they'll ask for, and they'll ask what kind of benefits you're calling for, and you'll say, I'm calling for outpatient mental health benefits in an office setting. If it's your own office, you'll do that. If you worked in a facility, mental health center or something like that, it would be different. But typically you'll say, I'm calling to verify outpatient mental health benefits for a client in an office setting. Okay, so they'll say, okay, let me pull up this information for you. It'll take me a minute. And so you'll be on hold. They'll come back and they'll give you this kind of information. They'll typically tell you what date that the benefits started. Oftentimes that's when whoever is the insured, a lot of times it's when they started working for the company, if they didn't have any kind of a change in their insurance plan over the years. Sometimes it's the start of a new year, so it just kind of varies from company to company, employer to employer. They'll tell you what percent that the benefits are paid at. Sometimes they'll say these benefits are paid at 100%, which is really nice, because that means that in some cases the client won't have to pay anything. Sometimes they'll have a copay to go along with that, but sometimes they'll say the insurance benefits are paid at 80% of the contracted rate. Now, contracted rate means that when you signed up with this insurance company, you agreed that you would be paid at a lower rate than whatever your typical rates are. If your typical rates were $100 an hour, and the insurance company said, well, that's nice, but we're willing to pay you $65 an hour for a therapy session. And if you said, okay, I'll go with that. So that's your contracted rate with the insurance company. So they're telling you that they'll pay 80% of that contracted rate. And what that would mean is that the client would be responsible for the other 20% of the contracted rate. They'll tell you what the maximum number of sessions are per year. It might be 10, it might be 20, it might be 30. It just kind of varies from insurance company to insurance company and from plan to plan. They'll let you know if there's any kind of a copay. Sometimes clients have to fork out a little bit of dough themselves to pay for therapy sessions. So they're kind of like a cost sharing type of deal where the insurance company pays something, the client pays something. So it might be a $15 copay. It might be $25, $35, just kind of varies. They'll also tell you if there's any kind of a deductible, which means that the client has to pay a certain amount of money first before the insurance company will pay anything. So that could be a $500 deductible. That could be a $1,000 deductible. It could be a $4,000 deductible. I just had one today that was a $2,000 deductible, which is not great at the very beginning of the year, because that means that the client has to fork out all this money before their insurance company will pay anything. And oftentimes they don't get to that point, the client, until the very end of the year, if they even get there at all. So that kind of is not the greatest thing for many clients. Then you want to find out if prior authorization is required. Sometimes the insurance companies, when you call them, they'll tell you that. Other times they won't. And so for me, I always ask, do I have to get prior authorization to provide this type of service? So you always want to make sure that you ask about that kind of information. I'm not going to get into the whole thing about carve-outs right now, but suffice to say that in some situations, there's another company, mental health company, like behavioral health company like Magellan or Value Options, something like that, that contracts with the major insurance company to provide the mental health benefits or the prior authorizations or something like that. But suffice to say that you just want to ask if there's prior authorization that's required. I always ask also if a particular diagnostic code is a valid and billable code. For me, I talked before about how I do attention deficit disorder evaluations. Insurance companies are funny. There are some insurance companies that will not pay for psych evals for attention deficit disorder. And I've gotten burned a few times, so I've learned that when I call, I'll give them the ICD-10 code number to check on to make sure that that's a valid and billable code. So I know that when I submit the insurance claim that I'll be paid for it. And then finally, the last thing you'll see, the reference number. After you get all the information from the representative at the insurance company, make sure and ask them for a reference number for the call. That's because if for some reason, they told you that the insurance would pay, 100% of the cost of services with a $35 copay, and you submit the claim and you get a denial from the company saying, we're not paying anything. You can go back and contact this insurance company and say, hey, I contacted you and you told me that you would pay 100% of the contracted rate. And they would say, well, we didn't say that. And you would say, yes, you did. In fact, I have a reference number of that call. And insurance companies will record these calls when you call them. And so they can go back and listen to the recording and say, oh, yeah, I guess we did tell you that. Our fault, we're going to pay you. So that's why you want to get the reference number. That's what that's all about. So I think that's about all the information. And, once you have this, you'll give the client, the person who called you originally, you give them a call back, let them know what the benefit information is. And it's really important that you let them know if they have a responsibility to pay anything. And you want to let them know that up front. And I think that's just good informed consent, and it helps them make a decision whether or not they want to schedule an appointment or not. So once you get that information, and if it's okay with them, if they seem to think that the insurance coverage is fair, it's okay, they want to go ahead and schedule an appointment. In the upper right-hand corner, at the top of the page there, you'll see that there's a little area where you can schedule the day and time of the appointment, and jot down their email address if you want to send them any kind of forms to complete ahead of time. So that's about it. I hope you found this to be informative.